What if one of the most preventable cancers was also one of the most commonly avoided conversations? And what if the thing you've been putting off, the appointment, the screening, the I'll get to it, was actually one of the most powerful longevity decisions you could make in midlife? Stay with me because this one actually matters. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been listening for a while, you already know this is the space where science meets lived experience and midlife is meted as an advantage, not a limitation. I'm Rosemarie. I'm also 53. I've spent nearly 30 years in the OR watching what happens inside the human body and when they don't go to plan. And yet, this is something I have not done personally. A colonoscopy. Not because I don't believe in it, but because, like so many people, it feels easy to delay. It's a bit inconvenient. It sounds uncomfortable. It doesn't really feel urgent per se. But after really sitting with the data and preparing for this episode, after researching this deeply for you, and honestly for myself, something shifted. This stopped feeling like a procedure, and it started to feel more like a personal responsibility. Can any of you relate out there listening? This is not fear-based. This is not reactive. This is informed, intentional, and quite frankly, built. We are talking about longevity a lot right now. It's having its moment. We are talking about VO2 max. We're talking about muscle mass, cold plunges, peptides, supplements, anti-aging. It is a thing. Slowing down aging is a thing. Being and optimizing our best self is a thing. Very few people are talking about the colon when we're talking about aging in this space. And the colon is an organ that does directly influence inflammation, immune function, metabolic health, and cancer risk over time. According to Harvard Health Publishing, the gut is involved in immune regulation and systemic inflammation deeply. This is not surface level. This is deeply affected. And here's a connection most people are missing. Chronic inflammation is one of the primary drivers of aging and disease. So when we talk about longevity, we cannot keep the colon out of this conversation. Let's just talk a little bit about the colon, what its purpose is. But I'm going to review some of this so you can see the big picture. First of all, the colon is your large intestine, and it's about 5 feet long. But it is not a passive organ by any mean. It absorbs water and electrolytes from your food. It processes waste, houses trillions of bacteria, produces short-chain fatty acids that regulate inflammation and metabolism. This is where your microbiome lives. And the microbiome is now being studied as a regulator of insulin sensitivity, immune signaling, even gene expression. This is not fringe science anymore. This is where medicine is going. This is the direction where we are headed in 2026 and beyond. One of the more fascinating shifts in research, particularly through the National Institute of Health, is how the microbiome influences not just digestion, but how genes are expressed, how inflammation is regulated, and even how the body responds to abnormal or cancerous cells, which means the health of your colon, it is not an isolated event. It is a systemic situation. So let's talk about a healthy colon versus a diseased colon. A healthy colon is going to have a smooth lining, no inflammation, which is also going to be no abnormal growths, balanced microbiome. It's going to be quiet, efficient, stable. Now the opposite, a diseased colon, polyps, which can become cancer, inflammation, bleeding, structural changes, tumors. Colon cancer typically develops slowly over 10 to 15 years. That timeline is everything because it gives us a window to intervene. Here's the truth about working in the OR and what I think sometimes is an edge. I've seen what advanced disease looks like. I see when people are proactive, I see when people are reactive, and I see when people, fortunately, just wait a little too late. And I've seen what early detection looks like. They're not the same conversation. There is a profound difference between removing something small, a small polyp, a small growth, and then instead managing advanced cancer. In this conversation, it would be colon cancer. Let's go to some data. It's going to give you the big picture of where we sit when it comes to colon cancer. According to the American Cancer Society, colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer, the second leading cause of cancer death in the U.S., over 150,000 new cases annually. But this is not just a U.S. conversation. Globally, according to the World Health Organization and International Agency for Research on Cancer, colorectal cancer is the third most commonly diagnosed cancer worldwide and the second leading cause of cancer death globally, with over 1.9 million new cases each year. Whether you are listening in New York, London, Sydney, or anywhere else in between, this is one of the most significant global health issues we are facing. But here's what matters. When it is caught early, the 5-year survival rate is about 90%. Late stage, well, that number drops dramatically to around 14%. That is not subtle. That is the difference between prevention and reaction. Also, over the last couple of years, I've been paying attention to studies that are affecting people in the younger populations, both in the UX and globally. This is one of the biggest shifts in medicine right now. Rates are rising in people under 50. And research in the JAMA Oncology News shows that early onset colorectal cancer is increasing by about 2% per year in younger adults. But this is not just happening in the US. Globally, we are seeing similar trends. These are being observed across multiple high and middle income countries. According to the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer, early onset colorectal cancer is rising in regions including North America, Europe, Australia, parts of Asia, and South America. And in some countries, the increase in young populations is happening even faster than in older adults. Why is this? This is actually telling us something important. This is not genetics alone. This is environmental. This is behavioral. Why are we seeing this uptick? Well, we're seeing patterns. We're looking at ultra-processed foods, low fiber intake, metabolic dysfunction, sedentary lifestyle, microbiome disruption, chronic inflammation. And here's what's emerging in the research. Being exposed to these factors early on in life, poor diet, antibiotics, environmental toxins, these may be shaping the gut microbiome in ways that increase risks decades later. So this is not random. Unfortunately, this is modern living. Let's now get to modern midlife. We're going to jump ahead to those over 40. Midlife is a physiological shift. We have metabolism changes, gut function changes. Let's zero in on women. Estrogen decline affects the gut lining and microbiome balance, which then motility can slow, constipation becomes more common. Now let's look at the men. Testosterone gradually declines, visceral fat often increases. Metabolic health can shift, especially insulin resistance, and that matters more than people realize because increased visceral fat and metabolic dysfunction are directly linked to inflammation, and inflammation is a key driver of colon disease. For both men and women, we're going to look at gut motility tends to slow with age. Microbiome diversity can decrease. Lifestyle patterns, diet, stress, movement start to compound. And here's the piece most people do not connect. We've now got slower transit time equals longer exposure of the colon lining to waste products. And this really matters. This is why moving your bowels regularly matters because over time, that prolonged exposure to toxins combined with inflammation and metabolic changes can influence our risk and increases our chances of colorectal cancers. I'm going to add in another layer because it is no secret GLP-1 medications are also having their moment. And we're going to talk about this in a balanced, clear, and global context because this is current. Semaglutide and tirzepatide. They slow gastric emptying. because they reduce your appetite and they help with weight and metabolic health. And they're not niche anymore. In the United States, according to analyses cited in JAMA, which is the Journal of American of Medicine, and Kaiser Family Foundation, roughly 1 in 8 adults report having used a GLP-1 medication at some point, and usage is highest in adults between 40 and 64, those managing weight, insulin resistance, or type 2 diabetes. But let's zoom out globally. According to the World Health Organization and global pharmaceutical market data, over 500 million people worldwide are living with type 2 diabetes. More than 1 billion people globally are classified as overweight or obese, which means the eligible population for GLP-1 medications is enormous. There's no denying that. That is a very, very large number. Adoption is accelerating rapidly across North America, Europe, the Middle East, parts of Asia, and Latin America. In fact, global demand for GLP-1 medications has surged so quickly that supply shortages have been reported in multiple countries over the past 2 years. So when we talk about midlife health, this is not just a US trend. This is a global shift in metabolic care. Also, to be clear, we are now seeing research of the positive effects of GLP-1s, not just on maintaining or managing our glucose and insulin per se. We're looking at the cardiovascular improvements. We are seeing advantages to these medications now. So the more and more people who are on these medications, doctors are able to track the outcomes. And the outcomes are favorable and moving in the direction of more GLP-1s medications coming into market. We have not seen a decrease in these medications. We are just seeing new ways that we are consuming these. It went from injection. Now the FDA approved the first oral medications. We are also going to see this affect colon health. So this will be interesting to see how doctors track this over time. Okay, so let's get back to the topic at hand. This is a global shift in metabolic care. But GLP-1s also slow bowel motility, increase constipation in some people. Not everybody, but it does cause constipation in some people who are not careful and do not monitor their diet and their hydration. So to be clear, these medications are not causing colon cancer. That is not what I'm saying, but they do change how the gut moves, which means you have to be more intentional about your fiber, about your regularity, track your bowel movements, because slower motility over time can affect how long waste sits in the colon. This is more about awareness. This is about management. None of this is fear-based, what I'm trying to give to you today. This is just knowing your risk. So now let's look at what actually impacts colon health outside of certain medications like GLP-1s. Let's simplify this. 1, okay, let's go to fiber. Fiber feeds beneficial bacteria, supports regularity. 2, your microbiome diversity, fermented foods, whole foods, movement. Movement is the third thing that impacts your colon health. Improves motility. So the more you move, it's going to really help your bowels. 4, hydration affects stool consistency. And also, I'm going to add this to the list. 5, stress. Stress impacts gut lining and inflammation. Let's look at supplements with discernment. Some evidence-supported options. Psyllium husk, right? Fiber. Magnesium affects motility. Probiotics, very specific strains we want to look at. But here's the truth. Supplements don't replace behavior. They don't replace behavior or lifestyle. They just support it. That's why it's called supplemental. Now, let's pause for a moment with something I call news you can use. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force now recommends screening for colon cancer to start at age 45. And this shift didn't happen in isolation. Globally, organizations like the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer have been tracking rising colorectal cancer rates, especially in younger populations. As a result of this tracking, many countries, including the United States, parts of Europe, and Australia, have begun lowering screening ages or expanding access to earlier detection. So, whether you are in the US or listening globally, the direction is the same: screen earlier, detect sooner, and prevent more. And here is the key: colonoscopy doesn't just detect cancer, it prevents it because polyps are removed before they can become cancer. That is the interesting thing about this screening. When you actually go for your colonoscopy, they can go in and whenever they see, they can remove on site. So it's a really efficient test and preventative measures towards your health. So why are people avoiding it, me included? I am way past my screening date. And I'm going to be honest, right? It's not just the prep. It's the discomfort, it's the stigma. And more importantly, a lot of it is inconvenience. We are at an age where we are very independent and we've got very busy lives. We're taking care of jobs, other people. Preparing for this test, arranging for somebody to come with us to this test and screening, it can be more of a life convenience. This is the reality. But it goes deeper than that. It's the quiet fear of what might be found and the belief that if we don't look, we don't have to deal with it. We've normalized spending thousands of dollars on wellness, supplements, treatments, and aesthetics, but we hesitate on screening that can prevent cancer. And that's worth thinking about. So I really thought that that contrarian truth was worth putting in there because we're really good at putting money on treating sickness instead of the preventative factors. What is this prep really like that all of us are dreading so much? So let's talk about it honestly. Yeah, it's very inconvenient and you're probably going to be in the bathroom more than you like to be, but just plan for it. Clear that schedule. Hydrate aggressively. Follow instructions exactly because what the prep is doing is allowing your physician to see clearly, and that is everything. The better your prep, the better your screening can be. So I thought that that was something useful and helpful when you're looking at the prep. And when I was reading up on the procedure, because to be honest with you, even though I work in healthcare, I really haven't been avoiding this conversation. I work with people who cannot believe I have not had a colonoscopy. And quite frankly, actually, I'm not surprised because I know myself and I know where I put time and my energy. I'm not saying this is a good way to think, but this in my head made sense. I live really healthy. I barely drink alcohol. I've always been very focused on food. I've never smoked. I'm not overweight, very active. So, and I know this is a very ignorant way to look at it, but I'm just being really transparent with you. It was the prep and it was the conversation. I'm listening to other people and I'm hearing how horrible it is. But in all reality, I've done juice cleanses. I wouldn't say it's an official colon cleanse, but I've done fasting and water fasting and juice fasting and all kinds of ways that I've cleared out my body. So now I'm finally realizing, well, how could this prep be much different? Maybe for me, it won't be as bad as it is for other people who maybe haven't lived a more healthier lifestyle. I was looking at the procedure, looking at the anesthesia, and this is what I found. So the procedure itself, a little bit of IV sedate, from what I can tell, it's painless. It's going to be about 20 to 60 minutes, depending on your colon health and what the doctors discover while they're in there. And most people say overall, the anticipation was worse than the experience. And usually that's the way our brain functions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to choose a provider because I am actually going through this as well. And it also does depend on your insurance and your finances. But let's overall talk about where you choose to go because not all facilities are the same. And this is one area where I personally feel details matter significantly from personal experience, whether it's this procedure or any procedure. So at a baseline, we're going to look for a board certified gastroenterologist. Strong adenoma detection rate, ADR, meaning they're skilled at finding and removing precancerous polyps. An accredited facility that follows established safety and quality standards. They are your non-negotiables. But I want to add something here. Based on my own experience working in healthcare and medicine for nearly 3 decades, personally, I prefer having procedures in a hospital-based setting. I know it's not always convenient. It's not always the most comfortable. It's not always the most fancy. But I personally look for facilities that have immediate access to higher level of care. What do I mean by that? You want to have access to an intensive care unit if needed. Experienced staff who can manage your airway, your respiratory or cardiac events, the ability to respond quickly in the rare event of a complication like bleeding or perforation. Now, let's be clear. A colonoscopy is considered a very safe procedure. Serious complications are rare. But in medicine, we don't just plan for what's expected. We plan for what's possible, and anything is possible. You never know how your body is going to react anytime you go into a procedure. Every moment matters when something unexpected happens. Acuity care immediately is key. You could be the healthiest person and have this unforeseen medical complication. Again, this is not fearing you or to scare you. This is just to realistically prepare you. Honesty with your care team, this matters more than people think. All right. So, this is another piece that is just as important as the facility that you go to. And it's often overlooked. A lot of people, they hide, they do not disclose everything to their medical provider. But you really need to be open. You need to be honest. You need to be thorough with your doctor or your healthcare providers. This means clearly sharing all medications you're taking, prescription, over-the-counter, supplements. They are trained to know what you're taking, how that may interact with your anesthesia or other drugs that you may require. Again, we are planning for the unexpected. Any pre-existing conditions, your alcohol intake, recreational drug use, if it's applicable, prior reactions to anesthesia or sedation, your height and weight. You have to put your pride aside, be a little humble. Every medication is based on height and weight. And in the anesthesia setting, this is a really important factor. This is just really important to be honest about your social, your street, your lifestyle, your height and weight, and pre-existing medical conditions. There is no shame. The medical team is not there to judge you. They are there to treat you, because all of this directly affects how anesthesia and sedation are managed. Sedation during a colonoscopy is typically safe, but it is all still medicine. Alcohol use, certain medications, underlying conditions can change how your body responds. And here's the truth. We are there to keep you safe. I'm talking to you like as somebody who's going through this, but I am also somebody who works in the operating rooms. The more accurate the information that is provided, the better your team can tailor the procedure to you. So when you think about this process, it's not about scheduling a test. It's about choosing the right environment, being with the right team, and showing up fully informed and transparent. Because this is not just about getting through a procedure, it's about doing it well. And if you don't feel comfortable doing any of these things in this particular setting, then you're going to look and find a team where you do feel comfortable sharing this information with, okay? In medicine, the details people hesitate to share are often the ones that matter the most. To you, it might be trivial, but to your doctor, your surgeon, your nurse, your healthcare team, it could be something that greatly affects your health. So why is colonoscopy so effective at the end of the day? Because it interrupts the timeline. Polyp to cancer now becomes polyp, which is then removed, no cancer. That's not screening. That is prevention. After researching this, after understanding the data, after seeing what happens when people wait too long, I made the decision. I now have my referral from my primary doctor to make the appointment, not out of fear, but out of alignment. This is part of taking care of the body that carried me through decades of life. Let me ask you this. What are you putting off that you actually know matters? Is it this test? Is it other screenings? What is it? Stay with that for a second. How about some action steps? 1, awareness. Know your risk. 2, adjustment. Adjust your fiber, your hydration, your movement. And 3, alignment. Schedule that screening. Get it on your calendar. Not someday, now, in the near future. Midlife is not about reacting to disease. It's about preventing it, getting ahead with clarity. If this episode sparks something for you, send it to a thoughtful friend. The best conversations rarely happen alone and can really affect and help save your life. If you want to dive deeper, visit rosemarieb.com. Download the Midlife Guide to Choosing the Right Healthcare Provider. Once upon a time, we waited for symptoms to show up. And then suddenly we realize prevention requires participation on our behalf. Fortunately, we've got the tools. And as it turns out, the most powerful longevity decisions, they are not complicated at all. They're the ones we've been avoiding. From New York City, I'm Rosemarie. This is your second opinion, where curiosity is the real fountain of youth. And age, it's always your advantage. Until next time.